When I got the X-H2S, I don't even know what firmware it was on, but I have upgraded to 6, to 7, and now 7.1. This is the best firmware that I have personally experienced. I did a variety of different tests, a couple with the 16mm f1.4, which is an older stepping motor lens, and some with the 33mm f1.4, which is a newer linear motor lens. I also included some examples of some bird videography that I did with the 150 to 600, which is a linear motor lens. And then I'm recording this section here with the 56 1.2 RWR, which is like a stepping motor lens. I'm going to play out a variety of different clips. I tested in a lot of different speeds and sensitivities, and I'm not showing everything, but I'm not trying to cut around anything. I only cut things just for the sake of time. So I'm giving you a very representative sample of different speeds and different sensitivities and what the camera is doing. And in some of the situations, I'm able to record the screen, so I'll have those side by side, the actual capture from the camera and then the screen recording so you can see the tracking box. But when I do the outdoor test with the 33 1.4, I don't have the ability to record the screen, so you just have to watch the recorded image. This first series is sort of a talking head or active talking head scenario with a 16mm 1.4, again, stepping motor lens. This first one is sort of middle of the road settings, tracking sensitivity +2, ASP +2. And all these I'm testing in multi with face eye set to auto. Unless you have the tracking sensitivity set really low, meaning that it will shift to something else, I was impressed by its ability to stay locked onto the eye and not get distracted by things that get close to the frame. I think that's an improvement. I also don't know if it would be able to not shift to the cup when I'm just looking through the handle previously. You can really see the difference between tracking sensitivity +4 and tracking sensitivity 0 when I get up out of the chair and leave the frame. When it's at +4, it doesn't shift focus right away. It just kind of stays locked on, and I think that's also a new improvement. So there's less, if not no, sort of that confirmation shifting as the camera is racking focus and trying to find what it's supposed to be focusing on. It is much more, I don't know, phase detecty in the fact that it will just kind of go to something and stick on it as opposed to just kind of hunting back and forth for a second. It doesn't freak out when the subject leaves the frame. It is able to sort of just find something in the background to focus on relatively smoothly, relatively quickly, most of the time. Another big improvement in regards to that is when you have the sensitivity set to +4, so it's locked on setting, when the subject leaves the frame, it will actually stay on that focus plane for a good amount of time before it actually does a rack focus to the background. So that's pretty cool. They also fixed the eye box, so you can't just like kind of get the eye box and just fling it away. And then if you turn around, the eye box doesn't just sort of drift off to the side. This is with the 33mm f1.4. These are the fastest settings essentially. So tracking sensitivity set to 0 means it will shift, or it's more likely to shift to something else. And ASP +5 is the fastest. To me, this is like the least good setting. It really highlights sort of like the stepping transitions that the focus is doing. And it's also the most likely to just kind of be wonky and weird. In the 16mm shots indoors, when I turned around, it performed really well. It didn't freak out, it didn't hunt, it just sort of stayed where it was. Outside, regardless of the tracking sensitivity at AF speed, when I walk into frame, facing away from the camera, oftentimes it was slow to find me until I turned around. And then in the middle of the shot, when I turned around, it sometimes would just kind of flip out and kind of switch to the background, switch to me, switch to the background, to varying degrees depending on the sensitivity and the speed. So this lens in this scenario did not perform as well as the 16mm indoors. Hopefully this can sort of put to rest the idea that the linear motors are better. I think, especially when it comes to video, the only thing that they're better at is being silent, but they don't really perform any more smoothly than the stepping motor lenses do. I mean, maybe they can move out and out faster, but that's not typically what you want for video anyway. So coming back into the frame with the tracking sensitivity set to +4 definitely tricks the camera. It didn't happen when I had the tracking sensitivity set lower. So when I came back into the frame on one of the earlier shots, might be the first one in the sequence, it was able to find me when I came back in really close. But in the two examples of tracking sensitivity set to +4, it didn't shift to me until I backed away. Those are some definite improvements, but I think the underlying problems with the system remain. And to me, the two biggest are that it just isn't able to really real-time track a subject. There are always, or almost always, frames that are going to be out of focus, regardless of the speed and the sensitivity settings, and regardless of how fast the subject is moving or how fast the camera is moving in and out. And regardless of the lens, linear, stepping motor, it does seem that the system has like this sort of stepping progression. It doesn't have a smooth transition in and out. And you can see that, you know, if you have like bokeh elements in the background, like twinkle lights or just something that's obvious, and you can just see that stepping progression. And then dovetailing on the part where it isn't able to really track 100% of frames, it also will sometimes just not get focus, even though the eye box is, or the whatever subject detection box is enabled, even though it will detect what it's supposed to be focusing on, sometimes it just won't focus. And you'll see that in the shots where I'm leaning back in the chair. There's a couple examples where it'll just take a little bit to get focus. In addition to multi with Face Eye Detect, I wanted to do the wide tracking to test out the touch tracking feature. I'm trying to tap around the Fujifilm, so there's like kind of this white-black contrast, and you know, the tracking box is a little big, but it mostly found that and stuck to it. But here is like, regardless again of the tracking sensitivity and the AF speed, this should really sort of illustrate that the camera just isn't, it can't really push the information fast enough to focus every single frame. There's also this weird instance where if it didn't find focus, I was able to just shake the camera back and forth. You could see it right there. And that kind of like triggered it to like reacquire focus. And I did that multiple times, and every time it worked. Not that you're going to want to do that, but I just thought it was funny. So I tested the Sony ZV-E1 in the same scenario, just to make sure I wasn't just being a complete douchebag and like no camera could focus on this. I didn't even set the transition speed and the sensitivity. It was just what the camera was already set to. I know that's a lot of negativity, but I do think it's the best version that I have personally used without having rolled back to early versions. And I do think it's usable for a lot of different scenarios, and especially for content creation. I think it's fine. If you love Fujifilm for all the other things that it's great at or good at, then this is definitely going to be workable, I think. And lastly, I'll just leave you with a sampling of bird videography. I don't even know what the settings are. It was really cold out, and I don't know that my brain was working at peak capacity. I think overall it's working really well in this scenario. And again, I'm not like trying to cut around things. If it loses focus, I leave that in there. I'm also showing you a couple of clips where like while it's acquiring focus and what that looks like. But like this shot right here, this is really good. So again, I'm not showing this because I thought it was struggling here. Obviously the bird is mostly obscured, so I just want to show you what it looks like when it finds it. And it does it really smoothly. And then once it did find it, it was able to stick there even though the bird was re-obscured. It didn't freak out and lose that focus. This lens isn't parfocal either, so as you're zooming in, it will go out of focus. And I just wanted to show you what it looks like as you're zooming in, how quickly it was able to find this bird. This one, it never found it, but I just wanted to leave it in because it's not absurd that it wasn't able to find it in that shot, I don't think. I was having issues with the OIS, and I added some warp stabilizer onto these clips, but that's why it's like shifting up and down. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns, and maybe I'll see you in another video.